Discover how a shift in perspective can lead to incredible growth. Welcome to The Flipped Story.
I'm David Gadarian, and this is The Flip Story, the place where human potential meets market creation, and every conversation rewrites what's possible. The show explores the journey, the grit, and the narratives we build while navigating life. We're here to share some lessons learned from the driver's seat and find the wisdom in the journey. Because at the end of the day, it's all about the story we tell, the strategy we use, and the flip that moves us forward. So let's dive in. Imagine you're in a boardroom. The air is thick with spreadsheets, bottom lines, and cold hard logic of international trade. For decades, our guest today was the man people called to master that world. With a PhD in management and a career spanning 30 years, Dr. Bruno Cignacco knew the traditional recipe book of business by heart: outperform, outmaneuver, and out-earn. But then his story flipped. Bruno began to see a variable blocker that no spreadsheet could account for: the human soul. He realized that the cold corporate model wasn't just heartless, it was inefficient. He started asking radical questions. What happens if we treat compassion not as a weakness, but as a competitive advantage? Today, he's a TEDx speaker and the author of The Art of Compassionate Business. He has moved from teaching people how to sell to teaching them how to serve, and from managing by fear to leading with love. Bruno, welcome to the show.
Thank you, David, for your invite. I feel very honored to be here. Thank you.
Absolutely. We're thrilled to have you. So,
Thank you.
Bruno, I want to start right at the crossroads. So you had all these credentials, you had the traditional success, and can you share with us, what was the moment you realized you had to flip your own script on everything you had been taught about business?
Very interesting question. Well, there is a very specific moment that I can recognize. There are different moments, but one specific one that is about an article that I read many years ago that was titled The Human Moment, or The Human Moment at Work, published in Harvard Business Review. And I read a lot of articles about business topic, but this article was quite special because it was an article not about strategies, not about tactics, not how to become more competitive or more productive or increase the quality levels or get more sales or market share, but this was about building strong relationship with colleagues at work, connecting to colleagues on a mental and emotional level. This was written by a psychologist, and I was very surprised because it got me thinking about the importance of the human side of business. This means that it's not only about these key performance indicators, but it's about building strong, sustainable relationship with colleagues within the workplace, employees, management, but also with other stakeholders, individuals and groups with interest in our organization outside the company, for example, customers, suppliers, community members. Then I read a book that was going deeper into this, that was titled The Conscious Capitalism. And also this book gave me some example of companies that can be human-oriented. Human-centered means focusing on the human side of business, which implies kindness, compassion, generosity, gratitude, and also not only this human side, but also focusing also on the economic side. So this means that these two sides of business, according to that book and according to that article, were not incompatible. I started researching. This was the inflection point where I started researching, and I noticed that there are many examples of companies, hundreds of examples of companies from different sectors, from different countries, that are human-centered. They care for their relationship. They foster these relationships over time, and they try to strengthen this relationship with stakeholders. And also they are very successful economically speaking. They have very good brand image. They have very good reputation, high productivity, high quality levels, high profitability. And see, this got me to, before the pandemic, got me to write for several years, to write the book that then ended up being titled The Art of Compassionate Business, that was published before the pandemic. And I noticed in my research process that there are very specific principles. I call these principles timeless principles or perennial principles that most of these example of companies adhere, they abide by these principles, and they are so common sense that most companies in the world that are not compassionate, they are not human oriented, miss these principles because of different reasons. In practice, when I published the book, and before this, I started advising companies not on traditional topics as I was doing before, that were topics such as strategy, tactics, international trade activity, international negotiation, but I started also training companies on how to build a much more psychologically safe workplace, how to develop much more meaningful communication in the workplace, how to connect to a customer in a much more service-oriented way. And I observe in these consultancy practices and training practice that some of the companies that I felt that were much more welcoming offer a bit of resistance, to this type of training, this type of advice. And then I discovered that there are many, this also helped me complete the book, discovered that there are many reasons that keep the companies in the traditional business paradigm, which is profit orientation. Let's look for only economic results. Okay, let's prioritize the economic results as the most important aspect of business, dismissing by default the human side of business. So this is in a brief summary. So was the transition from a consultant, business consultant, specialized in international marketing, specialized in international trade, and then transitioning into a much more human-oriented advisory and human-oriented research. Because before my book, The Art of Compassionate Business, I published a book called International Marketing that talk about strategy, tactics, different way of negotiating in cross-cultural environment and so on. But I feel that The Art of Compassionate Business is offer a broader perspective, which not only include the economic aspect of business, but also the human impact and the environmental impact of these activities.
So let me ask you, let me just stay right there. So you're in between, right? You have your first book, which is international marketing, which is, it sounds perhaps a little more of what you might describe as a traditional approach. You discover this human oriented philosophy right at that moment. If you don't mind sharing, was that like a Eureka moment for you, or was that a deep research and you were questioning and you had to kind of figure it out and piece it together to come to some new state?
It was like a puzzle, because a Eureka moment, but not as a shock. It was putting pieces together of a puzzle, because I didn't understand the principle that sustained at the beginning of the research process. Was quite interesting. I like this question. Nobody asked me this question before. So the idea is that at the beginning of the research process, I have a very vague inkling of what could be the sustaining principle of a human orientation. But I wasn't sure about what were the pillars of this human orientation. After seeing hundreds of cases of company, I don't have any doubt. I can summarize now these pillars.
Right.
But at the beginning, it was a kind of intrigue, and it was a kind of intriguing. Why can this company be at the same time? Because most people believe that this is incompatible. Being human oriented is incompatible with being successful economically speaking. And I discovered throughout my research and through the analysis of different scientific papers and very real case scenarios that the principles are not mysterious, but they're quite common sense. And there are two main principles that I want to highlight here that took me several months or probably years to discover. The two main principles, and they're so common sense that people will be surprised, are interdependence and social reciprocity. These are two main principles. If you want me to summarize my full book, including the second edition of 440 pages, can be summarized in two main principles: social reciprocity and interdependence. And this apply to business environment, but also apply to life in general. But here we're talking about the business environment. What is social reciprocity? Very simple principle. When you treat people in a certain way, for example, in a kind way, they tend to respond in return in similar ways. So they tend to reciprocate. You treat customer in a kind way, you treat them in a supportive way, they tend to support your company through reviews, through recommendation to other customers. The opposite happens if you treat them in a negative way. If you treat them in a dismissive way, they tend to withdraw, they leave negative reviews, they will push other customers away. This is the first principle that is so fundamental that company miss. The second principle will be even more surprising, and is probably kind of a shock for most companies, is the principle of interdependence. It's so obvious that when I tell entrepreneurs about this, they feel like kind of embarrassed to know that it's so common sense. It's the principle of interdependence. In life and in business, you cannot succeed without the help of others. No company can succeed without the help of suppliers, without the help of customers, without the help of employees, without the help of community members, business partners. So if you need others, wouldn't it be nice to have all these people that you need on your side? You cannot force them to be on your side, but you depend on them and they depend on you too. So it's interdependence. If you can afford them to be on your side, the wisest approach is to build strong, sustainable relationship with them where the needs of both parties are fully met. This means that this is real relationship, when the needs of both parties are fully satisfied. How you do this? If, for example, if you are a company that want to get profit, more sales, but also customers have their own needs. They want a good product, affordable, the good customer, they want good customer service. Well, both needs need to be satisfied for this relationship to prosper. Well, if you satisfy customer need and you satisfy your own needs, this relationship is more likely to succeed, to prosper, to strengthen over time. If you only satisfy your own need, this means that you're selling products that you get profit and you get more sales, but you're selling shoddy product, low quality, very expensive, and you're not adding any value to customer. You are winning, customer is losing. This relationship will not prosper. Customer will withdraw. You can do this only once. It's a transaction. It's not a relationship. And it's a detrimental transaction because one party wins at the expense of other. So interdependence implies that you need relationships that are sustainable over time, where both parties are fully meeting their needs. These two principles is the summary of the whole new paradigm, that is a compassionate paradigm in business, where the company wins, customer wins. Company wins, employee wins. Company wins, community member wins. Company wins, the environment wins. So this means that it's a win-win-win. And this is the most important approach, because when everyone wins, everyone is willing to cooperate in a very unconditional way. You don't have to force customers to come to your company. They become committed and loyal to your company because you are satisfying their needs. The same happens with employees. The same happens with suppliers. These two simple principles took me many years to discover. And all companies that are compassionate have in common these two principles, believe it or not, and research back the fact that this is the way to have a broader view of business.
So just staying on that, I kind of like to explore this nature nurture concept a little bit. Have you found in your research and in your consulting that companies are natively predisposed to be compassionate, or perhaps the other way? Or is this something that companies can evolve towards and develop?
Well, I found both cases, but I feel that it's important the origin of the company. In many cases, the companies the founder have this vision of a broader view of business. So this means that they don't want only to start up a business to make money or to become more successful as entrepreneurs or business leaders. They want to make a positive change in the world. And this has to be with a very important concept that I mentioned in the first chapter of the book, that is the concept of the mission. What is the company mission from the start? That's the mission. What is the mission? What is the company doing in the marketplace? Why are they in the marketplace? Most of the companies have a mission that has only economic aspect. They want to get better product, more successful, growing internationally, and so on. But some companies, even from the startup stage, they set up a mission that is broader. They want to bring about well-being into people's lives. They want to create a better world. How the mission is worded make a lot of difference, because some mission are, or business purposes, are very limited to the economic aspect. Some missions are broader, and they want to bring about a positive state for all people involved, not only for shareholders. These companies that have a broader view of business, we call companies with a stakeholder approach, meaning that they look to benefit every single stakeholder, not only the owners of the company, that is only a specific type of stakeholders.
Right. And your point of view on this is those businesses are more likely to be successful.
My point of view is that these businesses have a much broader and much more complete paradigm of business, because they are not there only to make profits, but they are bringing benefit to other parties beside the shareholder, beside the owners of the company. And this creates a positive cycle of reciprocity, because imagine that the company is not only trying to benefit the owners, the shareholders, but trying to benefit everyone.
Right.
What do you expect this company when this company is carrying out this business activity, this company is very likely to bring about a much more positive reputation. Why? Because the company, in the eyes of the media, in the eyes of the customer, in the eyes of suppliers, they're not there in the market only to get profit, get more sale. But for example, this company might have, for example, a positive social impact with foundations or donation to communities. They might have also environmental impact with the use of green processes or organic products, or avoiding use of pesticides. And this company, in some cases, also, they are not only paying good salary to employees, but they are bringing about a positive workplace where people want to be. People are, in some cases, getting in a competition to work for this company. This is very coveted company. So this means that this company is bringing a positive impact, not only within itself, but in the whole external environment and in the world. They are making a positive dent on the world. And this, when the company has a very good reputation, and the company has a social orientation, and it has an environmental orientation, this company not only have a better reputation, better brand image, but attracts more talented employees, become a magnet for talented employees, and also attract high quality investors, that they are very picky and selective and look for companies that not only bring good returns, high returns, but also make a positive impact on the world.
All right. Interesting. Let's say, Bruno, I buy into your premise. Let's say I'm a business owner, and I agree. I think there's merit. Maybe even at one point I had a mission. Maybe my company's grown to a certain size, and so now I'm starting to have these other headwinds on profitability, these more traditional kind of means and methods of understanding the success of a business. How would you coach a business on how to measure on these particular areas that you had mentioned, this idea of, you know, giving back and happiness? What are the attributes there that if a business were like with a new CFO and the team wanted to say, no, this is our journey, we want to go pursue this? Are there measurables? Are there happiness measurables, metrics that are direct, or are they indirect that lead to kind of, leading causes and kind of that lead to more profitability because you make this virtuous circle that you've described?
Very interesting question. Yes, it's more indirect because in business there are two main variables. The variables that I consider that are known as quantitative variables in business, that this can be measured very clearly. These are the traditional variables. Some experts call this key performance indicator. These are profit, market share, sale, productivity. These are the traditional variables in business that most companies take into account. And these are for the economic results, economic success, growing exponentially, and so on. However, there are variables that cannot be measured precisely, and I call them qualitative aspect of business, qualitative variables. These are kindness, support, compassion, generosity, gratitude. And I want to cite a very interesting thought leader that observed, not everything that counts can be counted, and not everything that can be counted counts. So this means that in business, there are things that cannot be measured, counted, but are very valuable. They count. So this means that the second type of variables, qualitative, help companies build and strengthen this relationship with the stakeholders. Cannot be measured directly, but can be measured indirectly. Can I give you an example? For example, can you measure that the employees is supported in the workplace with figures? No, you cannot measure, but you can have a survey, and with the survey, employee survey, you can know if the employee is satisfied or not. Will give you some ideas, some insight into satisfaction. But also, I visited some companies as a consultant, and you can very easily detect if this is a fear-based workplace or this is a workplace where people trust. It's based on trust, it's based on support, compassion. You can have some little signs where people are much more relaxed, less stressed, how they address each other, how they talk to each other. When there is fear-based workplace, most people try to be more defensive, and they tend to talk to one another only about business topics, and in some cases they not even cooperate. They try to compete with each other. There is a very rush energy, a lot of busyness. Instead, in the workplaces that are much more compassionate, people are much more at ease, less stressed, more relaxed. People tend to cooperate. They know each other on a personal level. But without this, we saw that these two types of variables are fundamental. Most companies tend to focus exclusively or mostly on the quantitative aspect of business. This is what can be measured, what can be counted. Why? Because this is what brings economic results. However, counterintuitively, from my research, if you focus too much on the quantitative aspect, you tend to achieve by default this quantitative aspect, profit, market share, by all means, even dismissing the development of relationship with the stakeholders. Because if you want profit, you don't care so much about employees. You might exploit employees, you might deceive customers because the objective is profit. You might pollute the environment. It's all about profit. So there should be a balance between the quantitative aspect of business that can be measured and qualitative aspect of business. And the qualitative are so important because we saw before from the two main principles that you cannot succeed on your own. You need employees, you need customers, you need suppliers, you need community members to support your company. You can afford them to cooperate, but if you care for them, they are more prone to care for your company in return. So this means that this is also the example of the social reciprocity. So, and how you care for people, addressing their needs and try to satisfy as frequently as possible. And the great dilemma that many companies have is that they are a bit in a state of confusion. They believe that these stakeholders, customer, employees, have only one type of need. And they say it's all about economic needs. So, for example, employees need a good salary. Customers need good price for the product that they buy. It's not true. This is only one of the type of need that all stakeholders have. All stakeholders have four types of needs according to my research. They have economic needs. For example, an employee would need a good salary. Emotional needs, this means employee need to feel supported, appreciated, taken care of, valued on a regular basis. They need to feel competent. They need to feel proud of their work. They need to feel that they're making a contribution. All these are emotional needs. Social needs, they need to connect to others on a regular basis at work and outside work. And mental need, the need for a stimulation means they need novelty, they need to be trained, coached, learning new skills, enhancing their natural talents. Most companies focus on the economic needs of the employees and economic needs of customers, forgetting the other type of needs. So there is a very clear simplification of the needs of a stakeholder that also makes this more difficult. Company focus only on the quantitative aspect of business, that are economic aspect, and focus on the economic needs. And they forget the qualitative aspect, and they forget all the other type of need, like a social need, mental needs, and emotional need. This is fundamental because at the end, you are dealing with human beings, and human beings are multidimensional. They have various type of needs. If you focus only on one type of need, you are not building a strong relationship with them because you need to meet all their needs, not some of the needs or one type of needs.
So, just kind of building on that, a quick follow-up question. We're in this interesting time. Just if you look across the world right here, right now, there's a lot happening, and there's a lot of external studies on generational workforce and different types and different styles, different needs. And you're in the middle of this. You're somebody who's spent a lot of time, deep research, both on the quantitative and qualitative aspects of this. How much do you think there's a, a shift just based on generational norms, where there's maybe perhaps more receptivity to some of these ideas than there has been in, say, 10 years ago or 20 years ago?
There is some receptivity because new generations, especially the millennials and all these, are more open to this type of ideas. They have a much clearer social and environmental orientation. I feel that older generation like us, we are tend to be much more traditional, and we by default tend to choose the traditional view or model of business that is economically oriented. But I feel that these people are getting more receptive because also they see in the different media platform that the disastrous effects of being only economically oriented,
Right.
for example, such as effects such as deforestation, depletion of natural resources, child exploitation, worker exploitation in general, uh, all type of deception when selling products that are not safe for customers. All this is the extreme, the case examples of cases of being profit oriented, only looking for profit and not caring for a stakeholder, but putting some stakeholder at risk. For example, putting the planet at risk, putting workers at risk, and so on. So because people see this in the media, and most media platforms are sensationalistic, and they highlight this very clearly to grab viewers, so people are aware that these are the bad example, and they are at least reflecting on a superior alternative, and superior alternative that not only bring about economic well-being, but also bring about social and environmental impact, positive impact. But also I see from the customer perspective, I used to teach customer behavior at university, I see a new type of customer that is very intelligent and much more equipped with tools when making their purchasing decision. That is what we call in marketing the conscious customer that they're not only choosing with their wallet the product that they will choose, the buy or purchase, but they are also choosing those products that meet their needs and also bring about a positive impact on society through the companies with the broader mission and a positive impact on the planet.
I love that. So, shifting a little bit, I want to talk around some flip urgency and this concept that I think you tee up pretty well, which is the the idea of moving from a scarcity to a prosperity mindset and why the urgency around this.
Very interesting concept. Yeah, yes. This concept is interesting and is so fundamental because I used to teach economic at university, and the economic theory and the economic framework, they're always teaching us that all the resources are scarce by nature. But I don't agree so much because I feel that there are resources that generate other resources. The concept of prosperity mindset implies a very fundamental tenet that is the most important resource in business and in life is the human being. Why is so important? Because it's a meta resource. It's a resource that help companies and other organizations generate other resources. Human beings help companies generate more technology, innovative products, new services, new way to interact with customers, new way of promoting the product, new designs. And the prosperity mindset take into account this valuable human being, the meta resource, and try to nurture relationship with this resource in various ways. For example, the prosperity mindset have a perspective on investing in the human being. Most companies, for example, when you talk about employees' well-being, for example, let's give an example. Some companies set up a gym for the employees to practice a sport or get more fit and so on. They will consider this as a cost. As a cost, this means that we have to take into account, we don't want the cost to go too high. It's okay, we have to invest to be a model of a company in employee well-being, but this will be a cost. No, this is an investment in human beings. You are investing in the most valuable resource. The prosperity mindset means that you are investing in the most valuable resource and you will get unlimited returns. Why? Because when you care for people, these people are more prone to contribute to your company unconditionally.
Right.
But also the prosperity mindset implies that you don't focus so much on the external factors, what other companies are doing, or they launch a new model, or they are using better technology. You try to focus on what you can control, that is your own resources. Can you train your employees to enhance their skill much more deeply and more meaningfully? Can you develop a much better support network within the workplace? For example, that you care for employees' well-being, offering them counseling services free or social events outside work so that they can connect to one another on a personal level, and this can benefit productivity indirectly, benefit innovation, benefit lowering stress levels, and so on. So this means that you tend to focus on what is the internal resources that are under your control instead of focusing so much on the uncontrollable factor outside the company. Also, in this prosperity mindset, you tend to have a much more positive thinking. The prosperity mindset see opportunities where others see crises. So this means the most important question in a prosperity mindset is how can we add value to others? How can we add value to others in a meaningful way? The scarcity mindset will look for a win-lose. So this means a zero-sum game. This means we win, other will lose. We want to get more profit, we have to reduce the quality of the product so that a customer don't get a high-quality product. The prosperity mindset look for win-win-win agreements. This means we win, customer win, the environment wins. So this means that we will look for a product that is profitable, high quality for customer, but also good for the environment. This means made of organic ingredients, using green processes, using, for example, obtaining environmental quality certification like ISO 18000. So they take into account the concept of interdependence. Everyone should be benefiting from this business activity. And a prosperity company with a prosperity mindset will not make a decision that benefit one stakeholder at the expense of others, or benefit the company at the expense of a stakeholder. And company with a prosperity mindset focus more on cooperation instead of competition, which means that, for example, if we are within a sector, this means that, and this is very common in international trade, we will look for ways to cooperate with other within the sector or with other companies from other sectors. So this means that we'll try to develop strategic alliances where we can complement with other companies. We can share resources, we can share information. In some cases, we can share our customers and also share risk, but also we can work on a project jointly. So these are very common type of strategies we call in international trade joint venture, where companies cooperate instead of competing with one another.
Neat. And that gets back to some of that interdependence concept that you had
Very
introduced
important,
at the
very
very
important.
beginning.
Yes, very important, because the concept of interdependence again come back in a way that cooperation foster more interdependence and build stronger ties, and is focusing on expansive emotions. For example, care, support, compassion, gratitude. Instead, competition is generally fear-driven. So this means I'm fearful of that my competitor will outpace me, and as a consequence, I'm acting in a defensive way, not in a proactive way. So the prosperity mindset is always focused on proactivity. This means we are taking the initiative. We focus on the factor that we control: our human resources, our technology, our experience, our expertise.
Amazing. So I want to shift a little bit and talk a little bit about how people might perceive compassion and how, from a business perspective, they might be thinking compassion is soft. It often has negative connotations. And so how do you suggest that organizations can flip that narrative?
Very important. But first, let's define compassion, because there is a lot of misunderstandings about what compassion means. So compassion, in very simple terms, there are different definitions, but a very simple one is when people are acting in a compassionate way in relation to others. So compassion can be shown within relationship, unless you are talking about self-compassion. But here we're talking about compassion. So when you're compassionate with others, you understand how they think, you understand how they feel. So this means that you're connecting to them through conversation, through chats, through exchanges on a mental and emotional level. So this means that you're focusing on them, you understand how they think, how they feel, and you try to support them in a meaningful way whenever possible. So you try to help them, especially when they face difficulties. So because we are all human beings, there will be times that we face difficulty, and this happens to all people. So compassionate people are other-oriented, so they are oriented toward others. Why is so important? Because people, what they have in common is that we are all human beings with challenges, difficulties, fears. In some cases, we have negative experiences. In some cases, we have positive experiences, dreams, aspirations. This is what makes us human beings. In business, this is, most companies don't consider this is very important, and they might consider this is soft, but this is the opposite. Because research, and then I give some example, research has clearly shown that companies that treat employees in a compassionate way, for example, when employees face difficulties at home, they allow them to work flexible hours, or they allow them to take some time off. For example, if they have a relative that is ill, these are compassionate. But when employees are treated in a compassionate way, these employees feel less stressed. They feel more soothed. They feel more at ease. They feel supported by this company. This employee has a very positive view of the workplace, but also this employee has a very good image of the company itself. So they consider not only that the manager is compassionate, but the workplace is compassionate and the whole company is compassionate. And research has shown very clearly that compassionate workplace, some will call, more technically speaking, psychologically safe workplace, compassionate or psychologically safe workplace are very overlapping concepts, bring about more employee satisfaction. So employee satisfaction goes up. Why? Because they feel supported. Remember, these emotional needs are fully met. Employees feel taken care. The people in that company are caring and valuing this employee. They are caring for them. But also they have higher employee satisfaction, these workplaces that are compassionate, higher customer satisfaction because employees that are at ease, they are feeling supported by the company, are more prone to serve customer more efficiently, effectively, more meaningfully. And these workplaces have lower stress levels. Lower stress level, lower absenteeism, lower turnover, more productivity, more innovation because people are not stressed. So this means that lower stress level means that people can think more clearly, more creatively, they can use more critical analysis, and this impact positively on the bottom line.
I love
There is
that
there
business
is an
case on
interesting example.
compassion. I want to shift a little bit and talk around creativity and how you have a firm belief that creativity enhances business. And in particular, I want to ground this into a discussion on how can, in your view, with all of your learnings, how can leaders cook creativity back into a team that maybe has lost some of that spark?
Okay, very interesting. Well, creativity again, we're talking about scarcity mindset and prosperity mindset.
Hmm.
Creativity is under the company's control, so it's very aligned with prosperity mindset. So this means that what is the most important principle underpinning creativity? That everything can be improved, and anything, product, services, way of interacting with customer, technology, can be improved in a way that bring about much more well-being for all involved. More efficiency too, lower cost, and better service. And this is so important because when companies are really creative, they are not complacent. They don't adhere to a state of conformity. Even when they are very good at what they are doing, they are not getting stuck in the status quo. They know that everything can be improved. So this means that creativity implies the search for continual improvement. Some example of these are the Japanese automobile manufacturing. The concept of continual quality improvement. Can be related to the concept of creativity. This means that all ideas can be perfected even more, even when the company is doing well. So the real creative companies are the ones that are doing well, and even though they are doing well, they continually look for new ways of serving customers, designing better products, improving the quality of the products, making the design much more beautiful, and so on. This is quite important because you can say, if I'm doing things correctly, why I will take the risk? You are taking the risk because you want to add more value, because behind all the concept of creativity is adding incremental value to all stakeholders that are benefited by these products, services, and so on. However, some might say, oh, but creativity has a negative side because implied risk. Obviously, creativity has an inherent factor that is risk. Risk that what you develop might not succeed. Maybe the first idea won't be the definite one. Maybe you have to test different prototypes to get the new version of the product. Maybe that the technology that you are using is not adequate. You might have to develop new technology to develop this new design. But risk is inherent in life, and companies that are creative are willing to take the risk because they know that beyond the risk, there is a more important principle that is continually adding more value to all people benefited by this company. Customer, employees, suppliers, the community members, they want to improve the world, their impact on the world on a regular basis. They want to make a positive dent on the world.
All right. So, Bruno, we've really gone in a few different directions throughout this episode. It's been a ton of fun. It's been really amazing to appreciate your passion, your views, your ideas, and I want to get us into a segment of the show that we call the Flip Story Recipe Book. Here at the show, we believe success isn't a fixed formula. It's a collection of ingredients, methods, and mindsets. And if we were to step into the kitchen of the human potential today, what is the one, or I'm gathering you might say two, specific ingredients, a habit, a tool, or a process that you think every builder needs in their pantry?
Well, two ingredients are, the first ingredient is love, but it's not the concept of love that many people would think, the sentimental or um, emotional aspect of love that is used, for example, with partners or relatives or friends when you told them that you love them. But it's a humanistic aspect of love that I mentioned this word a lot in my latest book. And this concept of love implies some very positive values and principles that are timeless, such as generosity, gratitude, support, kindness, compassion. Why this is a very important ingredient? Because this is the fuel of sustainable relationship over time. Business relationship with customer, employee, community members, suppliers, and non-business one. So this means that this will be the first ingredient, and it's fundamental. You cannot, for example, let's imagine that we want to bake a cake. We cannot make a cake without this ingredient. The second ingredient that is quite important is the ingredient of value. We want to add value to others. On an individual level, every time that we interact with someone, are we leaving them in a positive mood? Are we leaving them feeling supported, soothed, calmer, more fulfilled? And on a business level, the same. Every time that the company interact with customer, are they adding value or are they reducing their value? Can customer find the product in the company that meet their needs, not your company needs, their needs? Can you serve customer in a meaningful way? Can you exceed their needs, not only meeting their needs? Can you exceed their needs, surprising them in a positive way, adding more value than they expected? If so, in this example of the customer, you are more prone to get a loyal and committed customer. If you give them more than they expected, if you are above the average company, this means that you want the best for this customer, even when this implies a smaller profit for your company. You have a customer for life. So the two main concepts are the humanistic aspect of love that was mentioned by many humanistic psychology like Erich Fromm, Abraham Maslow, and so on, and value. Value means continually improving people's life. We're talking about people in business, customers, suppliers, employee, community members, and others.
Amazing. Bruno, I got to say, it's been just a ton of fun having you on the show. I've really appreciated your puzzle journey where you kind of discovered something and you've built, and the passion that you've been continually revisiting through all your research and what you bring to everything here. I just want to say thank you again for joining us. The power of your vision is quite impressive. As we start closing out here, where can people find out more about you and your book, and how can they follow and engage in your journey?
Thank you for the question. Yes, the title of the book is The Art of Compassionate Business, published by Routledge. It's a white cover, and it's the second edition. This second edition has hundreds of examples of companies that are profitable and human-oriented, and has new sections such as human-oriented leadership, trust in business, and others. This can be found online in any bookshop, Amazon, or any other. and also offline. This is all worldwide. In any physical bookshop, you can find also the book. And if they want to find me online, they can find me on LinkedIn. They can follow me on LinkedIn, or they can check my website, www.brunocignacco.com. Thank you very much.
Amazing. I'll put those links in the show notes as well. So that's a wrap, folks, on this episode of The Flip Story. Again, a special thanks to Dr. Bruno Cignacco for sharing his journey and the lessons that had shaped it. We hope today's conversation reminds you that while you can't always control the plot, we all have the power to flip the narrative. Until next time, keep moving that story forward.